Hi, friends. Now, Dennis is back here on Patreon demanding that I stay on this nice versus kind business. He's not going to let me go on this one. Which is cool because actually that's a really important topic and he raises a lot of important considerations for that. So, Dennis is asking, how do we balance, being kind and being a truth teller, right? So, how do we negotiate circumstances where the easiest path to get to the outcome would appear to be very blunt and tell exactly the truth as you experience it, um, and weigh that against sort of the political niceties of maybe being in a work environment and whatnot. Now, a couple of caveats about this first. Dennis did specifically ask about being nice versus being kind without being too much of an asshole. I'm not the person to ask about that. I fail at that all the time. So I can advise you as to the considerations which you might attend to, but I certainly can't give you any hard and fast rules that are going to guarantee you an optimal outcome every time. So a couple of things to consider is one, when you are focusing on being kind, you must remember that when you are focusing on being kind, you must remember that you don't have a privileged experience. Your experience is not the truth. It's important to include yourself in the calculus and make sure that your experience is given its due weight, but you also have to give due weight to the experiences of others and accept that they may be having a different experience of the circumstances that you share, and that experience may reflect the world as it is just as much or more than your own experience. So you have to be very careful there when you sort of have this liberation from being nice, right? If your previous behavior has been arrested by the fear of social consequences and you say, I'm going to give that up, you can't let your enthusiasm for that lead you to a place where you're sort of arrogantly assuming that your experience is the only experience that matters. Consideration number the first. The next consideration is that anytime you get human beings sort of going in the same direction, working on a project together, like a work environment, there is always politics and there is always a consideration of morale, right? So politics in that there will be differing views on what collective action should be taken, and there will be different sort of power bases, people who have different levels of authority and whatnot. People will form little factions around that, and that just has to be navigated. And if you get into the business of sort of blunt truth telling at all times without consideration for that, then you can find yourself in an untenable political situation where you don't have the backing of any faction, and that's not going to be pleasant in the long term in a work environment as far as building productive relationships. So you can't take sort of, I'm not going to be nice because of some motivation of fear of consequences, as carte blanche to ignore politics altogether. Humans are political animals. That's always going to be an important consideration. And morale is also really important, where I tend to think of morale as what determines the proportion of effort that people apply to solving the problem that the group was brought together to solve, right? There's some bare minimum that allows them to continue to participate, and there's some maximum sustainable effort. And where do people fall between the sort of the bare minimum and then the maximum, right? Morale is that slider. And if you don't consider other people's viewpoints, and if you, really insist on conveying forcefully your experience at the expense of how that communication might be felt by others, that's going to lower morale. And, even if the truth is a truth that needs to be told, the telling of it might set back the project. So That's another really important consideration. Both of these point to what in Buddhism is known as skillful means, right? All the insight in the world is of no use if you don't have an understanding of human beings in general and in particular those who you share your environs with, that's capable of conveying that insight to them in a productive way. And so that means that we have to be very humble in the face of our insights. So, you can see, hey, the way forward for me, the most healthy way to proceed is, to focus on giving up this practice of being nice out of fear and instead try to be kind out of compassion. And kindness does involve a lot of truth telling. But if I can't tell the truth as I experience it in a manner that is fruitful and productive and ultimately non-harmful for the people around me, maybe I need to just step back and wait for a moment here. Maybe I need to remain silent for a little while longer until I really have a fuller understanding of the situation and have developed the skills to be a truth teller in a way that's constructive. So that's one other consideration. Now I am developing a fear that my camera's going to turn off, that I've gone on too long. Oh, it's not. We're not actually too bad. We're doing good. Okay. I need to get that timer blown up. So one other very important consideration that arises out of this question is simply the matter of how do you proceed when making a change in behavior. So we have been nice, but we would prefer to be kind. There's a temptation, a very strong temptation that we often fall into to begin a change of behavior with a rejection of all that went before. So I was nice before and I've now realized that that's not serving my well-being, so now I got to go do the opposite. And that also generally will not serve your well-being. So a sustainable practice is one that begins with the question, what takes care of me right now? And doesn't concern itself with what has gone before, right? So if what has gone before wasn't working, okay, let me evaluate fresh what takes care of me going forward, right? From a position of kindness and compassion for everybody who's involved, taking my needs seriously, where should I go? So rather than sort of reflexively reacting against what went before and doing the opposite, right, we sort of have to build ourselves up a new pattern of behavior from scratch without consideration for that, so that we don't fall into a trap of just sort of yo-yoing between two extremes of behavior. There's I'm being nice and then I'm not being nice and then I'm being nice and then I'm not being nice, and it's like, okay, well, neither of those is actually kind. So let's put our attention there. And that's going to serve us a little bit better. There's another consideration, but I've forgotten it. So we're just going to cut it off right there. I hope that helps. And here recording multiple recordings. One session-ish. This should really be going like that. Yeah? Maybe. I don't know. Multiple recordings. One session-ish. I don't know where to stand. Okay. I gotta get the focus. Let's get the focus on. The focus. Focus is on. That doesn't look good at all. I can see that, camera. You're not fooling nobody. You didn't focus. Okay, that's better. The focus is on. Okay, we're recording. I think. We didn't. Didn't it say last time when we were recording? No. Does it say on the camera? Where did I see that last time? Oh, it does say on the camera, but I thought it said over here. It does say over here. I'm just a crazy person. Just got a little bit of object blindness there. That's no big one. That's no problem. Okay. It's late enough that I'm having difficulty summoning clarity. We do our clarity summoning ritual, which is mostly hand. Let me step back here. Everybody can see the hand gestures that go with the clarity summoning ritual. Yeah. Push the focusing stick again. Oh yeah. There it is. Do we believe it? I think we believe it. Okay.